On April 22nd, 2020, Special Officer Vanessa Guillen suddenly goes missing. All attempts to find her prove abortive, and her case quickly assumes that of a missing person. However, when her remains are eventually found 6 weeks later, investigations reveal some of the most shocking allegations against the military and the role they might have played in the disappearance of one of their own. Born in Houston, Texas on the 30th of September 1999, Vanessa was born to Mexican immigrants in America, Rogelio and Gloria Guillen. She grew up in an atmosphere of love and doting parents. However, Vanessa didn't choose a laid-back approach to life. She was interested in sports, running and playing football in high school. She was a smart kid who knew what she wanted to do with her life. At about 10 years, she had limited her career options to only 2: a space engineer or the military. Gloria was terrified about the idea of her daughter joining the military. She preferred her dreams of becoming an astronaut over joining the army. As the years went by, Vanessa showed signs of an independent, strong woman, ready to do whatever it took to make her mark in life. Shortly after graduating high school, she called her mother one day to inform her that she had joined the military. Gloria didn't exactly receive this news with joy because of her concerns. However, Vanessa was an adult and could make her own choices. After her preliminary military training, she was posted to a military base just a few hours from her family. It was Fort Hood. In the beginning, this looked like a win-win for her. She was close to her family and worked a job she always dreamed about. Her job function involved working with small arms as a repairer, more like a gun mechanic if you ask me. However, her dream would soon become a nightmare. Although Vanessa was initially excited about her new job and the idea of finally doing what she always loved, she soon discovered that Fort Hood was not exactly a pleasant place to work. However, she brushed this away. After all, even the best workplaces had some negative people, right? She was convinced she could deal with whatever was going on. She'd learned to be tough and independent, and Fort Hood wasn't going to take that away from her. For now, her life was perfect. Her loving family was close by, and on top of that, she had found the man of her dreams. His name was Juan Cruz. The couple met at an event, and Juan says he knew Vanessa was the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with the moment he saw her. Theirs seemed to be love at first sight. They were engaged in March 2020 and planned to get married by December of the same year. Extensive planning was underway, and the two lovebirds couldn't get enough of them. Sadly, all of these would change horribly in a few months. You see, Fort Hood, Vanessa's place of assignment, had a long list of unpleasant history with some of the soldiers who served there. I'll get back to some of the terrible experiences later in this story. Sadly, Vanessa was going to become part of this dark, ugly history. A few months after Vanessa resumed here, her friends and Juan noticed that she was starting to act differently. She slept little, almost as though she was on the lookout for someone or something. She also began to lose some weight. For a strong woman like Vanessa, this was unusual, as it meant whatever was happening at work was really bad. Eventually, she opened up to her mother and told her that she was being sexually harassed. One of her superiors at the office had made a suggestive request to her, asking her to join him in an inappropriate, lust-filled adventure. She also begins to get inappropriate, suggestive messages from other soldiers, including being spied upon once when she was taking a shower. Gloria was concerned about this. This was one of the reasons she didn't want her daughter in the military. She asked Vanessa to report this inappropriate behavior, but she refused to. She told her mother some of the ladies in the base had experienced the same thing and reported these superiors. Unfortunately, nothing was done about it. She probably feared victimization if she reported, or she believed she could handle things herself. These were some of the things she was dealing with at her workplace. Vanessa seemed to find a way to distract herself with some work, including working out at the gym. Her parents said that when COVID hit in 2020, she was really unhappy about the lockdown, as it meant the gym would be closed. It's hard to determine if she loved the gym because she loved working out or if it was something that distracted her from the harassment at work. On April 22nd, 2020, Vanessa got a call from one of her superiors in the office to come in for some work. The COVID virus was raging at this point, so she imagined that whatever she needed to do wouldn't take so much time. Waking up as early as 5 a.m., she gets set to drive from Houston, where she spent the night with Juan, to Fort Hood. Juan was still half asleep but remembers Vanessa pecked him on her way out. Sadly, their lives were about to change forever that day. On the way, Vanessa texted a colleague and friend called Hightower Tay, who she was supposed to go hiking with. It turns out that the weather forecast for the day wasn't looking good, so she was trying to inform him that their hiking plans might be put on hold. However, Tay was looking forward to this exercise with his female soldier friend, so he texted her to say it wasn't about to rain. Vanessa never responded to that text. Meanwhile, she was now headed to the armory, where she had been requested to get the serial number of a gun. She texted her superior, Aaron Robinson, the serial number of the machine gun she had been asked to identify. At 11:13 a.m., Aaron closes the armory where Vanessa just finished working, as evidenced by a log entry. However, while Vanessa was no longer anywhere close by, her wallet, bank cards, and car keys were still in the room. Why did Aaron lock the room with her items in it? At about noon, Juan sent Vanessa a text, but she didn't respond. He chucked it up to a busy schedule and waited for her response, but never got any. Meanwhile, Tay, who had been waiting at their designated hiking spot, got impatient. He had been texting her endlessly, but she just wasn't responding. He decides to check up on her since it's already getting late. At about 6 p.m., he knocks on her apartment in the base. Her roommate opens the door, and after asking after her, he's informed that she didn't come to the room that day. At this point, he becomes worried. Soon, he's joined by another colleague and friend of Vanessa, CJ Landy. Together, they drive around the entire base looking for their friend. They drove up to a spot where she usually ran, but found nothing. Their fears increase when they eventually find her car in the parking lot. Where had she gone? Back at home, her sisters Myra and Lupe are worried. They had earlier informed their mum about their inability to reach Vanessa. An upset Gloria tells them to call the base and inform them to put her daughter on the phone right away. Juan is now worried sick. This silence from Vanessa is unusual, and he's now certain that something is wrong. Sometime around 10 p.m., CJ and Tay discovered that the last person Vanessa interacted with was Aaron, so they call him. However, Aaron almost dismisses them, saying he never spoke with her and that she left as soon as her work was done in a motor pool. He appeared quite groggy, as though the two younger soldiers had interrupted his sleep. When Myra finally reaches the staff sergeant at the base and asks after her sister, he tells her that no one has seen her since lunch. He also says there are no CCTV cameras, so no one can say with any certainty what happened to her. This is outrageous, to say the least. You see, Fort Hood has a history of unusual, tragic happenings. For instance, on November 5th, 2009, a soldier and psychiatrist, Nidal Hassan, opened fire on the base, killing at least 13 people and injuring 30 others without provocation. Sometime in 2015, news broke out about female soldier trafficking in Fort Hood. It turned out that the point man in charge of the US Army's Sexual Harassment/Assault Response and Prevention Unit, Gregory McQueen, used his position to exploit financially strapped female soldiers by pimping them to senior soldiers within the base. What I'm trying to say is that Fort Hood seemed like a dangerous place for its soldiers. Sadly, there was no effort to install CCTV cameras to forestall some of these evils. There had also been cases of disappearances. And before this video is over, I'll tell you of another female soldier who also suffered a similar fate just like Vanessa. This isn't to mention other cases of reported sexual assault as well as deaths. I mean, is this a military base or a slaughterhouse? By the next day, Myra and Juan were at the base demanding answers. After some hassles, they eventually meet specialist Aaron and ask him about Vanessa. Guess what he does? He laughs in their face and coldly walks away. I'm not sure how to react at this point, but this reeks of unprofessionalism and pure evil. By 24th of April 2020, the Army finally put out an absence without official leave notice on Vanessa. Even with this, no serious investigations seemed to have commenced. Vanessa's family appeared to be the only ones doing their bit. However, the military had begun some in-house investigations, especially after 2 witnesses came forward 26 days after Vanessa's disappearance. The witnesses told Army officials they saw Aaron trying to load a military tough box onto his car on the night of Vanessa's disappearance. Their accounts were different from Aaron's, who claimed to have done some workout before going home to be with his girlfriend, Cecily Aguiar. Aaron was summoned again, and this time his phone was checked. At this point, Myra reached out to other sources to help with the investigation since the military was silent on what was happening. Fortunately, one lawyer was willing to take up the case. She eventually got pro bono legal services from Natalie Kawam. Almost 2 months later, the military begins an official search for Vanessa. This appears to me to be quite careless on the military's part. Why wait for 2 whole months?
I'm gonna to start taking action, for them to start taking action, because we started since day one and it's not fair. I hope that they're really pushing, and I hope that they take everything I said in the conference room serious. Thank you.
The Guillen family also put out some of Vanessa's challenges, which bothered on sexual harassment. Soon, social media gets wind of this. At this point, hundreds of soldiers who served at Fort Hood or other military bases at some point also start to point out the rot in the military. And I am Vanessa Guillen.
How can she go missing on a military base? That's ridiculous. Go find her and better find her.
The meetings with CID were useless. There was no new information. And for them not to give us an answer was like, the problem is inside.
We can't tell everything. We have to maintain the integrity of the investigation.
Vanessa's family doesn't feel like they're getting straightforward answers from the Army. So they start holding protests outside the east gate of Fort Hood.
We started protesting every Friday.
When are we rolling?
Most of them spoke out about the harassment they also encountered in the base. As terrible as these allegations were, the Army denied any knowledge of Vanessa ever being harassed.
From the beginning, Guillen's family has claimed she was sexually harassed.
There is no credible information or reports that Specialist Robinson sexually harassed Specialist Guillen.
In its defense, it said it investigated her claims but didn't find any witnesses. This is not exactly true because other female soldiers were aware of this. Tay and CJ also knew about Vanessa's harassment. The question I'm tempted to ask at this point is, did the Army carry out a thorough investigation? If they did, why were her closest friends never interviewed? I believe the military wanted to cover its tracks and protect the interest of some of its officers. In the days that followed, shocking revelations about what happened to Specialist Vanessa will come to light. Although Aaron's phone had been searched, the details obtained from it weren't enough to say where he had been that night. The military later obtained a search warrant for his phone records and, believe it or not, they found that he had driven some 30 miles away from Fort Hood on the night of Vanessa's disappearance. This new information revealed Aaron hadn't been truthful. What was he hiding? And why did he say he went home that night after he was done with his official duty? The military swung into action, searching this area, and soon enough, they found skeletal remains. However, it wasn't of Vanessa, but of another soldier, Private Gregory Morales, who had also gone missing from Fort Hood a while ago in August 2019. What happened to Private Morales is another mystery that just goes to show how terrible the security at Fort Hood is. How does a soldier go missing and isn't found for almost a year? Sadly, when his remains are found, it doesn't make the headlines. It turns out that Morales was due to permanently leave the army just about 19 days before he disappeared. When his family reached out to the army, they were told he deserted the army and deserters were never looked for. I guess they're only considered good for court-martials. Now, I understand the military might be trying to uphold some code of secrecy about their operations, but how many more lives had probably been snuffed out without anyone's knowledge? On June 30th, Vanessa is finally found.
CID actually gave me a call that we found human remains.
Everybody was fearful that it was Vanessa.
Sadly, only her charred remains are found. Yeah, you heard that right. Whoever took her life burnt her body and disposed of it close to the Leon River. The investigators who found it also discovered the burnt remains of plastic pieces, most likely from the tough box Aaron was seen carrying that night. As the news broke, Aaron was being held in custody for violating COVID-19 protocols. He had his phone with him and he saw the news that Vanessa's remains had been found. However, the soldier watching over him was not aware of this. As he watched the videos and the breaking news of Vanessa's recovery, Aaron reportedly called someone on the phone and said, "They found pieces," quote unquote. It's believed that he called Cecily to inform her that their crime had been discovered. Shortly afterward, Aaron broke out and escaped custody. The soldier watching over him, who should have been vigilant, was not aware that Vanessa had been found. He also didn't know that the prime suspect had been sitting in his custody. As a result, he didn't give Aaron any serious chase after he escaped. Later that evening, the police found Aaron close to the base. When they confronted him, he pulled out his gun and shot himself. 3 days later, Cecily is arrested. During her interview, she claimed to have been with Aaron the whole night of Vanessa's disappearance. However, this statement didn't appear true. This is because when her phone was inspected, the call logs revealed that she and Aaron exchanged several calls, some of them even after midnight. When presented with this, she lied again, stating that she misplaced her phone and Aaron called the number so she could find it. Plausible, right? Well, it turned out that the call logs recorded conversations that lasted over a minute. If the calls were to find her misplaced phone, who was Aaron speaking with? When she was re-interviewed, she changed her testimony again. This time, she admitted to the calls from Aaron around midnight. However, she said she was driving that late as it helped to calm her down and cope with whatever stress of the day she had gone through. As the interrogations continued, her entire testimony fell apart and she admitted to helping Aaron dispose of Vanessa's body after he bludgeoned her with a hammer in the armory. In one final attempt to save herself, she claims that he made her do it at gunpoint. In her confession, she finally tells of her horrifying participation in Vanessa's disappearance. After Aaron gruesomely ended her life, he called Vanessa to help him dispose of the body. He later returned to the armory that night to remove the body he had hidden in the tough box. He was seen by the two witnesses struggling with the box as he loaded it into his car. The duo met up and had to hack and burn the body. When they discovered the body was not completely burnt, they buried it in 3 separate places. With a confession in place, a warrant was obtained to formally prosecute Cecily. On 29th of November 2022, she finally pleaded guilty to 1 count of accessory to murder and 3 counts of false statements. For this, she was convicted and sentenced to 30 years in prison for her evil role in the death of Vanessa. As I investigated this story, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. From anger over her death to pity for Vanessa and her family, I also had a few questions about who might have actually given the directive for Vanessa's murder. Although Aaron's the prime suspect, I'm tempted to ask why he did this. Vanessa said 2 superior officers were harassing her. Was Aaron one of them? She never mentioned the names of the officers, and it's almost scary to imagine that these officers, or at least one of them, might still be walking free in Fort Hood. So did Aaron kill her because he didn't want her to say anything, or was he acting on the instructions of the actual officers who harassed her? In a twist of events, I also found out that Aaron's girlfriend was the wife of another officer, Keon Aguirre, who was still married to her at the time she was seeing Aaron. It's believed that Vanessa had seen Cecily's picture on Aaron's phone, and this might have scared him. You see, it's a violation in the Army for officers to go after their colleagues' partners. Yeah, funny that. This looks like the perfect motive for murder. Although I'm tempted to ask how Vanessa got her hands on his phone in the first place. Oh, and guess what? Keon was brutally murdered by people he knew on June 19th, 2023. This makes me ask if there's a bigger conspiracy going on. I'm also tempted to ask if these murders and harassment are some form of racial statement. This is because just last year, another Latino officer was found dead under questionable circumstances in Fort Hood on March 13th, 2023. Her name was Ana Basaldua Ruiz. Just like Vanessa, she was part Latino and 20 years of age. She also wrote about sexual harassment in her diary, although she never reported this. In the same diary, she wrote about a soldier who she was in a relationship with, choking and slapping her. When interrogated, the soldier said he did all of these things jokingly, quote unquote. He also claims Ana never told him how uncomfortable she felt with these acts. Finally, the military rules her death as an act of suicide. I'm not sure how they came by this claim, as there was no suicide note or anything that indicated she wanted to end her life. They believe she must have taken her life after failing a drug test. She also had a pending case of shoplifting items at a post exchange. Were these enough reasons for her to end it all? Her family disagrees with the Army's verdict and smells foul play. If the military claims to be taking the security of these female soldiers seriously, Vanessa and Ana's deaths are proof that they're not. In the aftermath of Vanessa's death, the Army has had to do some internal assessment and evaluation of their senior officers. 14 commanders and lower-level leaders were either fired or suspended for their obvious ineffectiveness in securing the lives of the soldiers under them. Some affected soldiers include Brigadier General Jeffrey Broadwater and Major General Scott Effland. While these appear as proactive measures, is it enough to stop the menace at Fort Hood? For now, the official story is that Aaron, aided by his adulterous girlfriend, ended the promising career and life of Vanessa Guillen. But is this the whole truth? Only time can tell. I can only ask that Vanessa's soul finds peace.
Que con nada me devuelven a mi niña, con nada me devuelven a mi niña, porque mi niña es lo más precioso que puedo tener, mi niña.